Welcome to Mr. Haunt's dungeon, where the darkness comes alive. Dive into spine-chilling tales and eerie encounters that will keep you on the edge of your seat. If you love the thrill of a good scare, hit that subscribe button and join us for new frightening and true stories. Don't miss out. Fear awaits. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get to the story. My library is cursed. It was a dreary autumn afternoon when I, Emily, a librarian at the small-town library of Millfield, stumbled upon a hidden section that would change my life forever. The library was an old, sprawling building with labyrinthine corridors and forgotten corners, perfect for someone like me who found solace among books. I had worked there for nearly 5 years and thought I knew every inch of the place. But that day I discovered just how wrong I was. One particularly quiet day, I was tasked with cataloging some ancient volumes in the basement, a place rarely visited by patrons or even staff. The basement was a dimly lit space, filled with the scent of aged paper and mildew. It was cluttered with old furniture, stacks of unsorted books, and boxes that hadn't been touched in decades. As I moved a stack of dusty books, my hand brushed against a cold metal latch hidden behind a shelf. Curiosity piqued. I cleared the surrounding debris and found a small, hidden door set into the wall. I pried it open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. The door's rusty hinges creaked ominously, echoing through the silent basement. With a mix of excitement and apprehension, I grabbed a flashlight and ventured down. The air grew colder and mustier with each step, and the smell of aged paper and mildew intensified. The stairs seemed to go on forever, each step taking me deeper into the unknown. At the bottom of the stairs, I found myself in a small, windowless room lined with shelves. The books here were different, ancient, with cracked leather bindings and titles written in languages I couldn't recognize. There was a palpable aura of mystery and foreboding. The room felt untouched, as if no one had been there for centuries. I felt a shiver run down my spine, but my curiosity outweighed my fear. One book in particular caught my eye. It was larger than the others, bound in dark, almost black leather, with strange symbols etched into the cover. The leather was worn and cracked, and the symbols seemed to shimmer in the dim light of my flashlight. Despite a growing sense of unease, I reached out and opened it. The pages were filled with intricate illustrations and text that seemed to writhe and shift as I read. Despite the eerie sensation, I was entranced. As I skimmed through the book, strange things began to happen. The room grew colder, and I felt a presence, as if I were being watched. Shadows flickered at the edge of my vision, and I heard faint whispers, though I couldn't discern the words. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination, but the feeling of being watched grew stronger. Undeterred, I continued reading. The text spoke of ancient curses, dark rituals, and entities that existed beyond our realm. One passage detailed a curse that would befall anyone who read the book. The reader's soul shall be bound, and shadows shall be their constant companions. I felt a chill run down my spine as I read those words. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in my head, and the room spun. I dropped the book and stumbled back, my flashlight flickering. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, and the shadows seemed to come alive, creeping towards me. I realized too late that I had unleashed something malevolent. Panicking, I grabbed the book and ran back up the stairs, slamming the hidden door shut behind me. I thought I could escape, but the curse had already taken hold. The shadows followed me, dark and menacing, and the whispers haunted my every step. For days I tried to continue my work, but I was plagued by nightmares and strange occurrences. Books would fall off shelves and cold gusts of air would sweep through the library, even on the calmest days. Patrons noticed my haggard appearance and the odd disturbances, but I couldn't tell them the truth. How could I explain that I had unleashed a curse upon myself? One evening, as I was closing up, The shadows gathered around me, more substantial and threatening than ever. The whispers became deafening, and I could feel my strength waning. Desperate, I remembered the rituals mentioned in the book Rituals that could potentially banish the curse. I hurried back to the basement, my heart pounding. I reopened the hidden door and descended the stairs, the cursed book clutched in my hands. The room seemed even colder and darker than before, but I had no choice. I flipped to the pages detailing the banishment ritual and began to recite the incantations. The shadows writhed and twisted around me, but I continued, my voice shaking. The temperature dropped further, and I could see my breath in the air. Just as I felt I couldn't go on any longer, a blinding light filled the room, and the shadows shrieked and dissolved into nothingness. I collapsed to the floor, exhausted but relieved. The whispers were gone, and the room felt normal again, if still eerily silent. I knew I couldn't leave the book where someone else might find it, so I carefully placed it back on the shelf and locked the hidden door, hoping it would remain undisturbed. But my ordeal wasn't over. The next few days were a blur of paranoia and fear. I constantly felt watched, and the memory of the shadows and whispers haunted me. I decided to confide in my friend and co-worker, Sarah, hoping she would understand and help me find a solution. Sarah listened patiently as I recounted my experience. Her face grew pale, but she didn't dismiss my story. Instead, she suggested we do some research on the symbols and the history of the library. Together, we spent countless hours poring over old records and obscure texts, trying to find any information that could help. We discovered that the library had been built over the ruins of an ancient monastery. The monks who had lived there were rumored to have dabbled in dark magic and forbidden rituals. The hidden section had likely been part of their secret archives, containing knowledge that was never meant to be found. One night, as we were deep in our research, Sarah came across an old diary belonging to the head librarian from the early 1900s. The entries detailed strange occurrences similar to mine: books falling, cold gusts of air, and a pervasive feeling of being watched. The librarian had also discovered the hidden section and had barely escaped with his life. The final entry was chilling. It spoke of a ritual to seal the hidden section permanently, but the librarian had been unable to complete it. Determined to finish what he had started, Sarah and I decided to perform the ritual ourselves. We gathered the necessary ingredients and prepared ourselves for what lay ahead. Late one night, we descended into the hidden section, the air thick with tension. We set up a circle of protection and began the incantation, following the instructions to the letter. The atmosphere grew heavy, and the room seemed to pulse with a dark energy. Shadows flickered at the edges of the circle, but we held our ground. As we neared the end of the ritual, the shadows surged forward, their whispers turning into anguished screams. It took all our strength to continue, but we finally spoke the last words. A blinding light filled the room, and the shadows shrieked one final time before dissolving into nothingness. The hidden section was silent once more. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the air felt lighter. We carefully placed the cursed book back on the shelf and sealed the hidden door, hoping it would remain undisturbed for eternity. But the curse had one last trick. As we finished sealing the door, we heard a low growl from behind us. We turned to see a pair of glowing eyes in the darkness. The cryptid had been released, a creature of shadow and nightmare, a guardian of the cursed knowledge we had disturbed. The creature was terrifying, a monstrous form that seemed to shift and flicker, as if made of living shadow. Its eyes were a piercing red, glowing with a malevolent intelligence. Its body was humanoid but twisted, with elongated limbs and claws that glinted in the dim light. It had no discernible face, just a void of darkness that seemed to absorb all light around it. The cryptid exuded a palpable sense of dread, and I could feel its hatred and hunger directed at us. The creature lunged at us, its form shifting and flickering like a living shadow. Sarah screamed and tried to run, but the cryptid was faster. It knocked her to the ground, its claws raking across her back. Blood sprayed, and Sarah's scream echoed through the basement. I grabbed a nearby chair and swung it at the creature, trying to distract it long enough for Sarah to escape. The cryptid turned its glowing eyes on me, its growl echoing through the basement. It leapt at me, and I barely managed to dodge its attack. Desperate, I reached for the book, hoping there was something inside that could help us. As I opened it, the symbols glowed with an eerie light. The cryptid shrieked and recoiled, its form wavering. I began to read aloud from the book, the words flowing from my lips in a language I didn't understand. The cryptid howled and thrashed, its form dissolving into smoke. With a final scream, it vanished, leaving behind only a lingering sense of dread. Sarah and I were left panting and shaken. We knew we had to leave the library for good. We locked the hidden door one last time, hoping it would stay sealed. We fled Millfield the next day, vowing never to return. I found work in another town, in a modern library far from the shadows and whispers. I still have nightmares sometimes, and I often think of the cursed section and the cryptid that hunted us. But despite the nightmares, I also carry a sense of relief. Sarah and I survived, and we sealed away the darkness that threatened to consume us. Years have passed since that fateful day, but the memories still linger, etched into my mind like scars. I often wonder about the hidden section and the cursed knowledge it contained. I wonder if anyone else will stumble upon it and suffer the same fate as I did. But for now, I try to focus on the present, on the light that fills my life instead of the shadows that once haunted me. I've come to appreciate the simple joys of everyday life, the warmth of the sun on my skin, the laughter of friends, the comfort of a good book. And though I'll never forget the horrors I faced in that hidden section, I've learned to cherish the moments of peace and happiness that I find in this world. As for Sarah, she and I remain close friends, bound together by the trauma we endured. We rarely speak of that night in the basement, but our shared experience has forged a bond between us that will never be broken. And so I continue to live my life, grateful for each day that passes without the presence of shadows and whispers. But deep down, I know that the darkness still lingers, waiting for its next opportunity to strike. And though I may have escaped its clutches once, I can never be sure that it won't return to haunt me once again.